All right, this video is going to be the first in a series about language learning in early childhood. I am anticipating I'll have to break it into multiple videos because there's a lot of interesting research, interesting findings to discuss. One thing that we know is that many researchers present early childhood, about age 2 to about age 6, as a sensitive period for language learning. Remember, a sensitive period is an optimal time, a best time for a certain skill to be learned or acquired. And you may remember in a previous video, I mentioned that to learn language at all, it seems like you have to be exposed to it before age 7. So, further evidence that there's something really special about, how the brain is set up during this time, during early childhood, that's really good for learning language. So lots of things are going on. The brain is not only getting bigger, you have more brain maturation, myelination, more efficient signaling. Adults help out by using scaffolding, by teaching the individual things about the world. Social interaction, other kids, peers also teach you things about the world. And so this is just a really great time for just learning about the world, including how to describe, how to communicate about your surroundings. And so another thing that I mentioned in a previous video is that learning words, building vocabulary, really takes off at around 18 months or between 18 to 24 months. You have this thing called the naming explosion or the vocabulary spurt, where they start to learn words rapidly. Well, in early childhood, you still have that going on. And so an average child knows about 500 words at age 2 and more than 10,000 at age 6. That's a lot of words. In the beginning, in the English language, they typically add nouns, but over time, they're also going to add verbs, adjectives, adverbs, conjunctions, and many, many, many more nouns. Now, one thing that helps with learning language so well, so quickly during this time is this process called fast mapping. Fast mapping is a very quick, efficient way for learning new words. It's speedy. It's sometimes imprecise. You can make mistakes, but you can fix them by trial and error. So children learn new words by tentatively, temporarily placing them in mental categories according to their perceived meaning. So this is one of those situations where they don't really know exactly what something is, but they store it for later usage. So they hear a word, like, all right, I'm going to save that and I'm going to try it out later. I'm going to see if I've got it right. So maybe they see a parent talking about something, and the parent's like, oh, hey, here, have a slice of cantaloupe. And they're looking at that and they're like, cantaloupe. Okay, so that looks like that melon thing there. That is cantaloupe. Cantaloupe looks kind of orangey, and it's okay. I'm looking at the colors. And so then maybe later they see some slices on the table and they're like, oh, are you eating cantaloupe? And the parents are like, yes, this is cantaloupe. You learned a new word. And then they're all excited, like, yes, I got it right. I figured out what the cantaloupe was. The cantaloupe wasn't the plate she was using. It wasn't like the fork she was using. And I figured out that thing right there that I'm looking at, that's the cantaloupe. Cantaloupe must be this fruit that they're eating. They can also make mistakes, though, because they're learning very quickly. They might have thought that the cantaloupe was the special plate that they were putting it on, or they might just see some fruit that's the same color and they're like, oh, you're eating cantaloupe. They're like, oh, sweetie, this is actually not cantaloupe. This is some other fruit that could look similar in some way. And so they correct themselves. They store the words rapidly and they try them out, and through trial and error, they figure out where they fit and how to correctly use them. And they make mistakes all the time, and it's no big deal. People correct them and they're like, oh, okay, cool, got it. And they're like, all right, I'll use it differently in the future. They do make a lot of mistakes. It's part of the deal, but it's a learning process. One of my favorite examples of this sort of fast mapping, imprecise procedure is from a book that I read when I was younger. Do we know Ramona Quimby? Some of you may have read the Ramona books. They go way back, written by Beverly Cleary. Let me start again. Beverly Cleary. Maybe she wrote clearly. And so it was about Ramona Quimby and her big sister Beatrice, who was known as Beezus. All right, and even if you've never read them or watched the movie based on the books, that's okay. You know, you don't need to have read them to understand this example. And so in one of the books, Ramona is starting kindergarten. All right, kindergarten's a big deal. First day of kindergarten, and so she shows up. And she's like, I'm going to learn so much at kindergarten. I can't wait. This is my first school experience. I'm going to learn. I'm going to become so smart. I'm going to be as smart as my sister Beezus, and I can impress her with my big kid knowledge. And one of the things that happens on the first day is they sing the Star-Spangled Banner. All right. Now, if any of you are not familiar with the Star-Spangled Banner, maybe they didn't sing it in your school. Maybe you're not in the U.S. That YouTube is for everybody. Well, there are some countries that don't allow YouTube, but YouTube is for more than just the U.S. certainly. And so the Star-Spangled Banner has this line, I can't sing, forgive me, in the dawn's early light. And they're saying the dawn's early light, but Ramona hears it as the dawnser, like one word, dawnser, light. And she's like, what the heck could that mean? I've never heard this song before. And so she figures out in her internal processing, she figures out that a dawnser must be a lamp that gives a light. And then she goes home and she can't wait to show off her kindergarten knowledge. And somebody in the family, like her mom or her sister, complains that it's getting dim. And so she says, why don't you turn on the dawnser? Thinking she's impressing everybody. And they're just looking at her like, what are you talking about? She's like, the dawnser. It gives a light. And then the worst thing that can happen, her big sister, who she always wants to impress, her big sister starts laughing and she says, oh, I know what you're doing. You're thinking of the dawn's early light. That's not what they're saying, Ramona. And then Ramona gets embarrassed and she's like, I wanted to impress them instead. I looked like a baby. And, she gets all upset. But it's that example of fast mapping. It's quick. Usually it works pretty well, but sometimes it does backfire because sometimes that quick storage is based on misunderstanding of not really knowing what the words are or what they apply to. All right. So that is one thing that happens with language development in early childhood, learning a lot and learning it quickly. All right. So I will have more videos about language learning in early childhood.